Hello. In this audio lecture, I'm going to address myself to Business Communication class, Semester 2. And in this audio lecture, I'll be talking about the process of preparing and writing a resume. I repeat again, the process of preparing and writing a resume. As an outline for this lecture, I'll first talk about the difference between a resume and a CV, especially in the United States and Canada. It seems that a lot of people think that a resume is just like a CV and that there are no differences between the two. Well, these people are partially right, especially if they are outside the United States and Canada. But in these two countries, there are multiple differences between a resume and a CV. We'll talk about them and see what makes this difference. Then I'll move to talk about the length of the resume. When I say the length, I mean how many pages should a resume have? 2 pages, 1 page, 3 pages? And then I'll talk about the format of the resume, and at the end, the content, which is the most important. Now let's get started. As you know, a resume is one of the most important documents that you should have if you are seeking a job. Most hiring companies and agencies require that you submit a resume together with your application. Of course, a resume cannot go alone. A resume cannot stand by itself, but it is supported by other documents, like, for example, a cover letter that we talked about previously, and like other supporting documents, like your educational credentials and your certificates, and of course, your professional experience certificates if you have any. As I said, a lot of people think that a resume is identical to a CV. Well, this is partially right, especially if you are living outside the United States, as I said, and Canada. In these two countries, there are various differences between a resume and a CV. Now, what is a CV in the United States and Canada? Of course, generally speaking, a CV is the abbreviation of a curriculum vitae, which is a Latin word that means life story or course of life. In the United States and Canada, it is an in-depth document which describes the whole course of your career in full details. It's usually 2 or 3 pages long, but sometimes can run over 10 pages and more if necessary. So it is more extensive, okay? It is extensive and detailed. A curriculum vitae contains details about your education, professional career, publications if you have any, awards, honors, and other achievements. In the United States and Canada, a CV is used only for academic applications. And when I say academic applications, I mean that we use a CV just for academic purposes, to apply to, for example, academic jobs, grants, research fellowships, or anything that has to do with academia. A resume is in fact a French word, and it means to sum up. So a resume in the United States and Canada is a short and concise document which is used for job applications in these two countries. The purpose of a resume is to provide recruiters with a brief overview of the candidate's work history and professional experience. A good resume should be targeted at a specific job and should be from 1 to 2 pages in length. So as I said, it is shorter and less extensive than a CV, which is of course long and more extensive, and sometimes it can go up. It can go up to 4, 5, or even 10 pages if necessary. Now, generally speaking, if you are applying for a job in the US or Canada, write a resume. Keep it short and customize it to match the job advertisement. For academic positions in North America, write a curriculum vitae in which you need to include every detail related to your academic or professional career. As we said, a curriculum vitae is extensive and more detailed. That's why you need to include any detail related to your academic or professional career. When applying for jobs in Europe, in the UK, or in North Africa, including Morocco, you will need to submit a document called a CV. But this CV is in fact almost identical to an American resume. So as you see, in Europe, in the UK, in North Africa, we don't make any difference between a CV and a resume. In fact, we use just the word CV, and the resume is rarely used, if ever. So anything that I'm going to say about writing a resume in this lecture applies to writing a CV unless you are considering to apply for a position in the United States or Canada, or unless you live there. Your resume summarizes your history and qualifications for a job. The best resume is designed and tailored in a way that shows how your education and work experiences have prepared you for a specific job. Now, what is the purpose of your resume? The purpose of the resume is to get you an interview. Of course, it is not meant to get you a job. Before the job, you want to get the chance to be interviewed first. And then if you are successful enough, you can convince the jury and then they will hire you. You will not likely be hired based on the resume alone. The selection committee will have to consider a lot of other things. Among them is your application, your certificates, your cover letter. So based on all of these documents, and of course based on the interview, they will hire you or they will reject you. But a good application and a good resume can set you apart from potentially thousands of other job applicants who will be your competitors. Remember, please, that everything in your resume should answer the question, why should the prospective employer hire me? Or to say it in other words, why do you think that you are the ideal person to fill that vacancy you're applying for? So for this reason, you need to pay the utmost attention to your resume and write it precisely and clearly. Estimates show that in their first screening, employers spend only about 20 to 30 seconds per resume, which is a very, very short time, 20 to 30 seconds, even less than a minute. But this very short time is enough for them to single out the best resumes and the worst ones. So therefore, try to avoid anything that can undermine the power and the strength of your resume, like for example, grammar mistakes or typing mistakes, missing dates or inaccurate dates. Sometimes you find that the candidate is using inaccurate dates, so this is very undermining and weakening. Missing contact information or inaccurate or unprofessional email addresses, poor formatting. And when I say poor formatting, I mean that boxes, templates, tables, use of header and footers are not used appropriately. Poor organization, long resumes, sometimes greater than 2 or 3 pages. So all of these things are very undermining to the power and the impact of your resume. And that's why you need to write your resume with the utmost care. Now, what is the acceptable length of a resume, or how long should your resume be? In fact, this is a very perplexing question for new graduates and for job seekers who are just in the process of writing their resume and their application. One consideration is how much time employers spend reviewing a resume. I said earlier in this lecture that employers spend from 20 to 30 seconds, and in the best cases, they spend 60 seconds reviewing your resume. This probably seems absurd considering how much time and energy you will devote to perfecting and crafting your resume over the years. But this very short time, as I said, is enough time for an experienced recruiter to quickly decide whether you meet the minimum qualifications for the job or not. Most employers prefer a one-page resume from a student or a new graduate, but two-page resumes are becoming more acceptable these days as well. Writing a one-page resume doesn't mean cramming 2 pages of information into one page by using tiny text and narrow margins. Of course, this will show and this will tarnish the beauty and the form of your resume. Your resume must be attractive and easy to read. So what should you do in this case? I think you need to shorten your resume by including only what is most relevant to the particular job and by using concise language. For example, do you really need to include your high school experiences? This may have been important to you, but perhaps you have more relevant, more recent experiences to include in your resume. However, don't make your resume too short. A resume that doesn't fill a page will probably convey something else. It will convey the idea that you lack experiences and that you have very, very few qualifications and skills. What is important here is that you shouldn't have a resume written in less than one page. But you may say here that I don't have enough experiences and I haven't worked many jobs, so what shall I do here? Well, in this case, you may include more detail for any other experience that you have. As a student, for example, you can talk about your extracurricular activities and any other activities that you were involved in during your educational course. You may also use a slightly larger font. Instead, for example, of 12, you can use 14. And more design features, like, for example, spacing. But of course, this should be used within reason. I mean, don't exaggerate this. Don't overuse this, because this will have a negative impact on your CV or on your resume. Now I come to the third point in my audio lecture, which is the format of the resume. Although the content of your resume is of course very much important and even more important than the format, an employer will get a strong first impression from your design. So your design also matters, and it is also very important. The format should make your resume easy for the recruiter to scan and quickly determine whether your background meets the job qualifications or not. So here you may include lots of white space and easy to read fonts, tasteful design features, for example, columns or horizontal lines. To highlight important information and important content, you can use font enhancements, like, for example, boldface or italics. And I think, if you remember, we talked about these graphic devices in class, and we said that these graphic devices, they clarify things and make things clear and simplify things better when we use them. You can use bullets and varied spacing. So all of these graphic devices are provided by today's word processing software, like, for example, Microsoft Word. So you can make use of them to organize the information in your resume in an attractive way, in a clear way, and this can leave a very positive impression on the employer. Writing a resume, in fact, can be a very daunting task, especially when you are faced with a blank um, page in front of you. You feel lost what to start with and how to design your resume. But I think today's technology is very much helpful because um, word processing software, like for example Microsoft Word, provides you with many templates that you can customize and use for your own style. At the end, please remember that your resume and cover letter must be 100% free from error. And I highlight 100% here. When I say it should be error free, your resume and your cover letter should be error free. Error in content, error in spelling, in grammar, and of course in format. 99% accuracy is simply not good enough when seeking a job. It should be 100%. It is commonly known that one or two typing mistakes are enough for 76% of executives to decide not to interview an applicant. So, one or two mistakes, one or two typing mistakes can cost you the job of your dreams. So please don't take it for granted. You need to write your CV or your resume in the best way possible by examining every and each letter. So this is something that you do at the end, which we call proofreading. You need to proofread your resume several times to make sure that it is error-free. Now I come to the last point of my audio lecture, which is the content of the resume, okay? Every resume is of course different than the other, and there are many types of resumes in terms of format, in terms of content, and style, of course. But recruiters and employers expect to see some standard parts in your resume. So as far as the content of your resume is concerned, there are some sections and there are some typical things that should be included. For example, your contact information. You can't write a resume without writing your contact information. So your contact information should come first. Then your education, and here you can talk about your college name, your majors, your degrees, and date of graduation. After education, you should mention your work experience or professional experience, and here you talk about the companies you worked for, the job titles and the positions you had, the responsibilities and the achievements, and of course the dates of employment. And at the end, you can include or mention other skills and experiences. Like, for example, you can talk about your extracurricular activities, the languages you speak, your computer skills, your special skills, etc., and so on. So these four sections are very important, and you should include them in any resume or in any CV. In fact, the content of your resume depends on what type of resume are you writing. There are basically two types of resumes: targeted resume and general resume. Now, what is a targeted resume? It is a resume that is prepared for a specific job application. It is individually typed and printed, and it contains information to show specifically how you qualify for that particular one job. Accomplishments and skills on this targeted resume are written to highlight the skills and qualifications, the experiences which are required for that particular job. According to specialists, a targeted resume is more powerful and should be used for solicited job applications. And of course, as I said, a word processing software makes it easy to prepare, personalize, customize, and update your resume. And the best Word software to use is, of course, Microsoft Word. software. A targeted resume is different than a general resume. A general resume is a description of your qualifications that can be used for any job related to your career objective and sent to more than one potential employer. It is appropriate for use when applying for unsolicited jobs that have similar characteristics. In terms of formats, there are basically three types of resumes: chronological resume, functional resume, and combination resume. I know that these three types of resumes are hard to explain using just audio because we need to have concrete examples at hand so that we can compare between the three types in terms of format and in terms of organization. But of course, I'm going to post many examples of each category on our Google Classroom so that you can compare between the three types. The chronological resume is referred to also as a traditional resume. The functional resume may be called a skills-oriented resume because the focus in this kind of resume is on the skills and experiences rather than on the dates of those skills. And the third format, the combination resume, we call it combination simply because this kind of format combines features from the chronological and from the functional resume. A chronological resume has information in each section organized by date, as simple as that, with the most recent information listed first within each section. Let me give you an example. In the section containing your experience, your current or most recent position is described first, okay? The resume then describes each previous position with the first position you held listed last. A functional resume provides information in a format that emphasizes qualifications categorized by skills and knowledge and related accomplishments. In other words, by functions. Experiences and the accomplishments are grouped and listed, and their function or skill headings pertaining to your career objective. For example, headings used for functions may include management, marketing, advertising, communication, or leadership. And under each of these headings, you list the skills that you have and the experiences that you have. The last format is the combination format. Some applicants use combination resume, which, as I said a bit earlier, which blends the strengths of the chronological format with the strengths of the functional format. Combination resumes work well for individuals with little work experience who are just entering the job market. Now, the question you may ask here, what is the format that I should adopt? What is the format that I should use? The format you choose depends on the job you are seeking, but generally speaking, managers, employers, and recruiters prefer chronological resumes. Therefore, they are more appropriate for most job campaigns. Now, regardless of the type or format of your resume, it should be carefully prepared, it should be accurate, it should be attractive, and it should present the information in a high quality presentation. It is the primary sales tool you will use to obtain an interview. The words you choose to use in your resume will tell your employers or your prospective employers about yourself, and it will give them an idea to determine how you fit the requirements for the position. Now I came to the conclusion of this very short audio lecture, and before I close, I would just like to remind you that you need to check our Google Classroom from time to time because I'll post examples of CVs from the three categories that I discussed in this lecture. And of course, you will be able to compare between the different features of each of these categories. One more thing, which is very important, is practice. As I say all the time, practice makes perfect, and the more you practice, the better your writing style becomes. As university students, I think writing an effective resume is one of the key skills that you should have and you should acquire and hone today, because sooner or later you will need to write your personal CV to apply for jobs, to apply for higher institutions elsewhere, to apply for scholarships, probably if you want to pursue your study abroad, to apply for grants. So the need will sooner or later come. Okay, the need for writing a CV will sooner or later come. All right, so that's it for today's lecture. I hope that the points I discussed in this lecture were clear. Of course, there will be other video lectures on the topic, and I will post them on our Google Classroom, of course, and on our faculty website. And there is another platform today, which is called Moodle. If you visit the website of the faculty, you will find Moodle and you can consult it, and you will find all the materials related to the course I teach, Business Communication, on the Moodle platform. Thank you very much for listening, and take good care.